Right. So we'll start with the session. Okay. So, well, first part of this is mostly theoretical, where you already know certain things about isomerism. Correct. So, as we go ahead, we'll see the critical cases where we normally get the struggle in isomerism. Okay. So, I'll just let me first brush through that. Wherever the important points are, you just keep a note on it. Okay. Not that you have to write anything. I have written almost everything that is needed for you. So just check out on those points, right? So just add those bullets in your book wherever it is needed. Okay. Now, in generally, whenever we say isomers, okay, so those are the compounds which would have the same molecular formula, same weight, okay, but they must have at least one of the physical or chemical properties to be different. Okay. Or there is another definition which will also say about isomers is that between the two compounds there should be significant energy difference. Okay, so significant as in sensible, which is not the case in all type of conformers, right? So therefore, when it comes to isomers, we usually say they should have significant energy difference, or they must have uh, different physical or chemical properties. Okay, and this phenomena is what we call it as isomerism. Now, when it comes to isomers, right, uh, another important point which you could check it out, that molecular weight should also be same. For instance, if you check out these molecules, CH4, CH3D, CH3H, okay, CD4. Now, these are not termed as the true isomers, or rather, they sometimes are called as isotopic isomers. Okay, since their molecular weight is different, we cannot call them as true isomers. Okay, these isomers can be categorized into structural kind and stereo kind. Okay, stereo are also known as the space isomers. Stereo are also called as the space isomers. Okay, structural or constitutional isomers. Now, when do we say structural or constitutional isomers? Suppose if at all I have a molecule like this, okay, simple pentane, and if I bring that to this, got it. So what I have made, to convert this A molecule into B molecule, I definitely need to break the bonds, got it. So that means I have to break a bond here and then make that bond on the other carbon. So basically what you're doing, from this carbon, you're changing the position of that methyl group to a new carbon. Okay. So when bond breaking is done, whenever we see bond breaking and making is done, bond breaking and making is done, along with that, okay, new carbon position, new carbon position is established. Okay, so in those cases you would see structural isomers. So in all of the type of structural isomers, one thing is common, that we make some or the other bond, and we will make to transfer that bond, or make that bond again on a new position. Okay, now that may be carbon or not, but usually we take it as for carbons. Got it. So that's about the structural isomers, how we need to figure out. In stereoisomers, again, we have two kinds, configurational and conformational. So, configurational is again of two kinds, geometrical and optical. When we use the word geometrical, so for instance, if you have a double bond like this, let's say A, B, C, D, right? Now, if at all I have to make this molecule as AB and DC, again, I have to break this bond as well as this bond, and then only I can make an exchange. Got it? So here also you are actually breaking the bond and making the bond, breaking and making the bond, but on same carbon or on the same center with different orientation. different spatial orientation. So that is the only difference between structural and configurational. Sorry, constitutional and configurational. In constitutional, you would put it at the new place, new position. In configurational, you will put it at the same position but with different orientation. So when you have different orientation, we call them as geometrical isomers. In fact, configurational isomers. You would see the same thing happening for optical isomers also. Okay, so geometrical and optical will have certain difference, which we will learn slowly. But I hope you got an idea about what is configurational. So configurational will always have bonds being broken and made, but they should be at different orientation on the same position. Now, when it comes to conformational, only rotation, rotation and bending of bonds. Only rotation and bending of bonds. No breaking. No breaking of bonds. Okay. Just by rotation and bending the bonds, if in case if you can get two molecules which have significant energy difference, then we can term them as conformational isomers. Okay. And this is all about how your orientation is in the space. That's why they are typically called as stereoisomers. Okay, so that's the primary difference between constitutional, configurational, and conformational. In structural type, that is constitutional type, we have mainly 5 kinds, out of which you can see first one is chain isomers. See, chain isomers will differ only between carbon-carbon linkage, okay, or what we call it as carbon-carbon skeleton in the molecule. Got it. So two chain isomers will be having different principal carbon chains. Okay, so they should have different principal carbon chains. For example, if you check it out with this uh, different carbon numbers, you can identify that if you have carbon 1, carbon 2, carbon 3, correct? None of them can show chain isomers because you cannot make it into smaller chain, right? You know, by making a substitute or something. But when it comes to carbon 4, now you can make it, right? So when it comes to carbon 4, I can make, see, this is N-butane. I can make it as isobutane. Okay. So there are two isomers that can exist here. So when it comes to C4, we can have two isomers. Now when it comes to C5, how many different ways we can put it? This one. I can make this as iso butane here, right? And then we have, sorry, isopentane, and this is neopentane. Okay. So these are the 3 ways we can change the chain length. Got it? And if you see 6, now we will have this, correct? This, this, and this. These are the possibilities. Got it? So one thing we are able to find out that we can get as you keep on increasing the carbon number, we would have more number of branches. We can make smaller chains and so on. Okay, but to actually identify the chain isomers, okay, so we can go with a simple fundamental called skeleton number. Okay, so skeleton number is a two-digit representation which represents how much is your chain length and how much are the carbon-carbon linkages which you have. Okay, for instance, if you see C4H10, so I got 2 possibilities here. Okay, in which you can see the chain length is 4. Sorry, you can see the chain length is for carbon-carbon. If you see the bonds here, so 1, 2, 3 here. So we will have 1, 2, 3. Sorry, my mistake. Yeah, total number of carbons present in that chain, you can see. 1 minute. Hey guys, you can see the screen. So I lost the connection. Power is off. Okay, see this. So you can see the first one. How much is the chain length here? It is a 4 carbon chain length, and there are no substitutes on it. So it is 4 and 0. While here you can see there are 3 carbon chain length, and there is one substitute. Got it? Likewise, if you check out for C5, okay, this would be 5 0, and we have here as 1 2 3 4 4 1, and here it is 3 2, and there are two substitutes on that, right? Similarly for 6, if you check it out, it is 6 0, 5 1. This is also 5 1. This is 4 2, and this is also 4 2. Okay. So one important conclusion out of this is that chain isomers must have different skeleton number. Then only we call them as chain isomers of each other. For instance, if you check out these two cases, it is also 5 1, it is also 5 1. So B and C here are not the chain isomers of each other. Okay. Similarly, if you see D and E here, D and E also have the same skeleton number. So they are also not the chain isomers of each other. So this is one way to predict the chain isomers. Okay. So from here, I have quoted this. These all combinations A to B, A to C, A to D. This is all for carbon 6 alkanes. These are all chain isomers except BC and DE. These are not chain isomers because their skeleton number is same. Okay. Now, if a question is being asked, students, like what are the possible number of chain isomers for C6H14? Now, usually we think like, okay, sir, D and E are similar, B and C are similar, so maybe there are only 3. No, since it is said it is possible number of chain isomers, you should write the answer as 5, all of them. Okay, so all the possible isomers which you can get it from C6. Got it? Now, why? Because see, if you consider A to B, that is also a chain isomer. A to C is a chain isomer. A to D is a chain isomer. A to E is a chain isomer. Okay, so with respect to N-hexane, rest all are chain isomers only for it. So therefore, the possible number of chain isomers you should write it as 5. Now, if the question is asked, see the different ways the question can be asked. How many minimum number of carbons required in an alkane, alkene, alkyne, alcohols, aldehydes to show the chain isomerism? All right. So what are the minimum number of uh, atoms that is required to show the chain isomerism? We just learned that up to C4 we cannot identify chain isomers. So that means for alkanes we should have up to 4. Okay. Same way, if you check out for alkenes also I require at least 4. Okay. So see, if you have one alkene here, right? So the only way I can do is this. Got it? So if you have an alkene in a propene, that is this propene, I cannot make it as a chain isomer. Okay, I can't find another chain isomer for it. So minimum number of alkenes required to make the chain isomer is also 4. For alkynes, it is 5. Okay, so I'm not writing all of them. Okay, so please do practice after the session. Just go through the notes and check it out whether all of these are matching or not. Okay. So for alkanes, it is 4, alkenes 4, alkynes 4. If it is alcohols, see, when it comes to alcohols, right? So again, we need at least 1, 2, 3, 4, and this much. Okay. So without this, I can't change the chain. So you can see now I can change the chain, right? So now the chain length is different. So that's when I can say these two are chain isomers of each other. So therefore, for alcohols also, minimum number of carbons that are needed are 4. Okay. For aldehydes also, it is the same as that of alcohols, 4. Okay. Again, very simple objective type question that could be asked. So how many number of carbon atoms required, minimum number of carbon atoms required to show the isomerism for all of this. Okay. So this is about the chain isomers. We can see the combination of chain and positional as we go ahead. So first let us understand what is this positional isomer. So one thing we have learned in chain isomer is that their skeleton number should be different. Okay, which is exactly the opposite for positional isomers. Here the skeleton numbers must remain same. So isomers which differ in the position of any of the atom or a group, okay, or even the multiple bonds like double bonds or triple bonds, right? So along with that, the positional isomers must definitely have same skeleton number. Then only we call it as positional isomers. Okay. See this for this matter. Check it out. If you check out these two examples, this is 4 carbon chain with 2 substitutes, 4 carbon chain with 2 substitutes. So both of them have same skeleton number. So hence these are positional isomers. Okay. Same way here, there is 3 carbon, right? So total, how many linkages do we have here, right? So when it comes to functional group, it is even much easier to recognize now. So check out whether the functional group position is changing or not. So it is at the primary position, now it is at the secondary position. Okay. Not that every time you need to check out on the skeleton number. It's much easier when you check out for alkenes and alkynes, alkanes and alkenes. Okay. Now check this here. See, normally we get confused that, okay, there is one methyl group which has been substituted, okay, which is not the case in straight chain. But unfortunately, if you check out here, the length of the chain, it is one carbon 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Length is 5, but now the main chain has only 4. Correct? Okay. So although you might see like some kind of a substitute change is happening, you would still call it as a chain isomer only and not positional isomer. Okay. The first priority is always given to chain. Got it? So if there is any change in the chain and position, if you feel like, okay, this is a position change, but still there is a chain length changing, that is always going to be chain isomer. Next one, if a double bond is changed in the position 1-butene, 2-butene, that is also a positional isomer. Okay. Now again, a similar question. Minimum number of carbons that are required, okay, to show the positional isomers for all of these cases. When it comes to alkanes, okay, so in case of alkanes, we require how many number of carbons? We need minimum 6 number of carbons to showcase the chain isomers, positional isomers. We just checked it out as an example above. This is the first example which you check. Next, alkenes. In the case of alkenes, we require at least 4. Okay, so because if you check out like this here, and position is changed here. So that's how these two are positional isomers of each other. Next, alkynes. In case of alkynes also, we need at least 4. It is similar to that of alkene. Next, for alcohols. See, for alcohols, if you have OH here and if you have OH here, that itself is a change, right? So this is primary and this is secondary. So how much do we require? We need 3. For aldehydes, we need at least 5. Okay, why 5? See, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So double bond OH. Okay, because aldehyde will always form at the terminal position. Okay, so first I need to figure out some kind of a chain which is constant 1, 2, 3, 4, and then on this 4th I can put one methyl group here. Okay, or I can put that methyl group here. So now I can say these two are positional isomers of each other. Okay, because the chain length is same. Okay, so minimum we need is 5. So I'm sure you guys can figure it out, this type of questions. Okay, right. Now check this out. If we need to identify chain and positional isomers, quickly we'll just go through this. Okay, so first one, see, position of chloride ion is changing, so this is positional isomer. We just discussed it. When it is cyanide, the chain length itself is changing, so it is chain isomer. With OH, position has changed, so it is just positional isomer. Okay, and next with next one, if you check out 1, 2, 3, here it is 1, 2, 3, 4. So the chain length has changed, so it is chain isomer. Okay. Next one we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So the chain length has been different here, so it is chain isomer. F. See, chlorine's position has been changing. Okay, so all of them, One time it is at ortho, meta, para, so that is positional isomers. Sorry. Same is the case here. This is also positional isomers. Okay. So I guess you guys can easily figure out which are chain and positional isomers. Okay. Now this will help you get the answers quickly, especially when alkyls are involved. Okay. Few type of isomers where we do not have to waste too much of time, right? What we can do, let us check. So if we have number of different, we were to find out number of different alkyl groups, okay, which can see in a chain on positional isomers. Got it? How many that would be? Let us see. If you have a methyl, I can't arrange more than one kind, right? So just methyl is only one particular type of arrangement. Okay, so it would be one. Ethyl also, I can't arrange them anything more than one. Got it? But when it comes to propyl, I can make two arrangements. See, one connection from would be from here, correct? So that connection is N-propyl. One connection is from here, right? So that is isopropyl. Got it? So there are two connections we can make if it is a propyl alkyl group. So therefore, we can have two connections here. Okay, so that means two possibilities, basically two alkyl possibilities if it is if it is a propyl group. Next, if it is C4, we can have N-butane, we can have we can have secondary butane, we can have isobutane, we can have tert-butyl, right? So N-butyl, secondary butyl, isobutyl, tert-butyl. These are the four different alkyl ways I can arrange. Okay, so therefore, the maximum number of alkyl alkyl groups which I can generate by 4 carbons is 4. If it is C5, you can see how many combinations I have made. So in case of C5, I can have first, this is iso, secondary, and this is also, this is primary on that second iso position, and this is tert. Okay, this is neo, this is straight chain, this is secondary straight chain, and this is tertiary straight chain. So these are all the different possible ways I can make pentyl to form as an alkyl group. Okay, so the total number of possibilities here, if you check out, is 8. So guys, you better remember this for easy problem solving. Methyl 1, ethyl 1, propyl 2, butyl 4, pentyl 8. And finally, if in case, I mean, so far in IIT, never it has been asked more than 5 carbons. But in case if it is asked for 6, the most possibilities you can have is 17. Okay. So 1, 1, 2, 4, 8, 17. Okay. So these are the numbers. How does this help? Let us see as a question. Suppose I need to find out how many different structural isomers of alcohols and ethers are possible for C5H12O. And logically, what is the first thing you'll do? You'll find out the double bond equivalent or degree of unsaturation. You can see degree of unsaturation is 0 for it, which means all of them are single bonds. Okay. So if they are single bonds, I can have two types of arrangements which I can make for this. One is an alcohol form and the other one is ether form, because they never simple alcohols and simple ethers, they do not have double bond or triple bond with this configuration. So you can see I can make alcohol as, suppose if there are 6 carbons, so I can make this as C5, 5 carbons, I can make it as C5H11OH. So forget about this OH now. Now think C5H11 is an alkyl group, and how many possible ways you can arrange? It is 8 possible ways we can arrange. So immediately you don't have to draw all of them. Immediately you know that, okay, there are 8 possibilities of alcohols which I can get. Okay. Same way, now check out ethers. There are 5 carbons. So what are the possible ways of arranging ethers now? See, ethers, I can arrange 1 carbon on the left, 4 on the right, 2 carbon on the left, 3 on the right. These are the only 2 possibilities which I can do. Rest will be repeated again. 3, 2, 4, 1 is again a repetition. Okay. So, 1 carbon can be arranged only one kind. but 4 carbon can be arranged in 4 kinds. 4 alkyl group is arranged in 4 kinds. So the total possibilities I can get is 4. So on the left hand side you have 1 carbon, right hand side you have 3 carbon. 3 carbon I can arrange in two ways. So 1 into 2 I'll get 2. So total number of possible isomers which I can get is 4 plus 2, 6. So 6 ether possibilities I can get. Okay. So instantly you can catch up that what is the total number of isomers? 8 plus 6, 14. So with C5H12O, I can have total of 14 isomers. Okay. So in case if you come across these type of questions, got it? So if it is a bigger number, and especially when you have simple alkanes, you can always do this. Okay. Let me take you one more question similar to that. See how many structural aldehydes and ketones are possible for C5H10O. Okay. I'm not asking alcohols. I'm only asking aldehydes and ketones. So in that case, again, you check out the degree of unsaturation. Double bond equivalent is 1. Okay. So if you check out an aldehyde part, you can see it is CXHY with CHO. This is how it is going to be arranged. Now check out, this is an alkyl part, which is C4H9 in this case, because I have to arrange total of 4 carbons with respect to CHO. So when you have to arrange 4 carbons, how many isomers do we got? Okay. In fact, we checked that when it comes to 4 carbon arrangement, we will get 4 of them, right? So therefore I can say here that I can get 4 alkyl arrangements. So 4 alkyl groups are present. So which implies I'll get 4 aldehydes from here. This is all without drawing. Okay. Next, if it is ketone, we have left side I can put 1, right side I can put 3. Total I have to manage 5. 1 C double bond is already there. So again 1 into 2. You can see it is 1 into 2 possibilities. If you have 2 and 2 on both sides, there is only 1 possibility for each of them. So 1. So total I can have 3 ketones possible. So total number of isomers we can get is 4 plus 3, 7. Okay. So when you have simple questions asked based on aldehyde, ketones, alcohol, ethers, okay, you can't apply this logics to everywhere, but at least for aldehyde, ketones, alcohols, ethers, you can simply apply this, how the alkyl chains are working, and you can instantly get the answers. Okay. So I hope this part is clear, how to check out chain and positional isomers. Okay. Next, check out about ring chain isomers. So ring chain isomers is the case where there is one open chain and the other one is a ring chain. So combination of these two, we always call them as, or rather comparison of these two, we call them as ring chain isomers. For instance, if the double bond equivalent is 1, right, I can arrange that in an open chain format like this or a closed chain format like this. So these two are termed as ring chains of each other. Okay. So next one, these two are also ring chains of each other. You can check it out. So there is a triple bond, butane, or I can make it as cyclobutene. Now C5H10. In case of C5H10, observe this carefully. These two are anyway ring chains, but these two are also ring chain isomers. Okay. We cannot say that, okay, both of them are rings, so how can we say these two are ring chains? Okay, because the length of the ring is changing, so they are also termed as ring chain isomers. Okay, so suddenly the question comes, sir, if they are ring chain, why can they be chain isomers only? Well, they are chain isomers also, but if in a given question you were given an option ring chain isomer and chain isomer, always prefer ring chain isomer. Okay, got it, right? And more importantly, whenever we say about the chain isomer, whenever we say about the chain isomer, chain is changing, right? Okay, so in that case, all of these isomers of each other, they are also functional isomers. Got it? So in case if you come across MCQ questions, always put both of them correct, ring chain isomers as well as functional isomers. Got it? I hope that part is clear. Now, if you check out position, these two, if you check out these two, here both the rings are same. Okay. and only the methyl position is changing. So hence we call it as positional isomers. But check these two now. These two, one is a ethyl substitute, the other two are methyl substitute. So obviously it is not some group's position which I'm changing. The group itself is changing. When the group itself changes, we call it as chain isomers. Okay. Now check this. It's very important. Between a chain isomer and ring chain isomer, I hope you understood the difference. Within the chain isomer, right? So this thing is common, but the chain of that substitute which you're checking is changing. Right? So they are called as chain isomers and not positional isomers. Okay. And you should not regard them as functional. Okay. Not ring chain isomers, not functional isomers, not positional isomers. They should be only chain isomers. Okay. Somebody has a doubt? Please mute that. If you have a doubt, just unmute, but otherwise keep it in mute. Okay. Yeah.
Sir?
Yeah.
In this case, there are two cyclopropanes are there.
Cyclopropanes.
This you colored yellow.
Yeah, yes, better. Tell me.
In that case, if I take the principal carbon chain as this propane one, so cyclopropane will be on the second carbon in the first case, and it will be on the first carbon in the second case. So I can name them position isomers.
You mean in these two?
Yes, sir.
See, position should be used when you know which one is a substitute, and the same substitute should change the position. Okay. Or whenever you are not sure of it, just check out the skeleton number. Okay. See the skeleton number for this. It is a principal chain has 3 and there are 2 substitutes, correct? While here principal number is principal chains are 2 and there is only 1 substitute.
No, sir, I am saying I am taking principal chain as this propane, not cyclopropane.
Propane and
that in this case also propane. So in this case, the cyclopropane will be on the second carbon, and in this case, cyclopropane will be on the first carbon.
But these are total 6 carbons, na beta? How are you comparing this with the other? You are comparing this with cyclo?
Sir, in these two cases only, I am taking first this as principal chain, this first. In this
this one, 1, 2, 3.
Sir, in this you brought one extra carbon.
Okay. Only 2 with this. Yeah?
Once can you name the carbon? 1, 2, 3.
1, 2 like this? Or on the cyclic? So 1, 2, 3. Okay.
No, sir. This 1, then second 2 is the middle carbon.
How can that be numbering? This is a chain. This is a chain, right? Either you get the chain or you get the straight chain, open chain. We learned this in isomerism, no beta. If this carbon is always a chain, what do you say, cyclic carbon, not the open chain carbon. Okay. Yeah. Okay. So as you can see, this is an important area which you have to check it out. Ring chain should always be given more preference in terms of functional isomerism. But both of them are functional isomers of each other also. So if multiple correct question comes, take both of them. Okay. Next, see what are the functional isomers. Functional isomers, right? So they differ in the functional group present on it. So in case if there is any different functional group, you call it as a functional isomers. Okay. So I'm sure you are aware of that. So we'll immediately go on understanding what is the cases. See, in which cases, what are types of functional groups you will come across. Okay. At least you should remember this so that you can produce this in the exam. Okay. For instance, if you have CnH2n plus 2 and O, first case, check out. Okay. The double bond equivalent is 0 in this. So that means it will always have single bonds only. right? So when there are single bonds, what are the functional groups which you can expect? You can expect alcohols and ethers. These are the functional groups which you can expect. Okay, but if the degree of unsaturation, right, or double bond equivalent is 1, then I can have a lot of functional groups here. Ketones, I can make it as ketones. I can make it aldehydes. I can make enols. Enols. That means en plus all. Then I have unsaturated ethers. You can have unsaturated ethers. I can have cyclic alcohols. We can have cyclic ethers, okay, which are oxyranes. Cyclic ethers as in different forms of epoxides and oxyranes. So these many different combinations you can get from that. Okay, so just to showcase as an example, you can check it out. If at all you have C3H6O, okay, this is one very typical example that is very frequently asked. Okay, so check out. If you want to calculate the total number of isomers, first I'm writing the alcohols. And what type of an alcohols I can write? I can write unsaturated alcohols, right? So I can get these two possibilities. Okay, and one more possibility is that change the position of the alcohol itself this way. So these are the three possibilities. I can get only one cyclic alcohol. Please check out degree of unsaturation. I'm serving it as 1. So in case wherever you are confused, check out degree of unsaturation is 1. So this, which is ketone, and this, which is an aldehyde. Okay, and here, wait, I can take this way. This way, which is an cyclic unsaturated ether, and then this is an epoxide. Okay, and one more, I can put it as an oxyrane. This is another oxyrane. Right. So these are the total possible isomers which you can get. C3H6O. Okay, so I hope all of you understood this. So in case if you have one double bond equivalent, how many different forms of isomers you can get? Okay, now check this. C4H8O. Okay, C4H8O. Now in this, same degree of unsaturation is 1. Similar question, but usually the question will always be asked that exclude alcohols and ethers of any kind, whether it is cyclic or whether it is straight chain. Exclude all of them, ethers, oxyrane, epoxides, exclude all of them, and only focus on aldehydes and ketones. So in that case, question becomes even simpler. So one, this is a straight aldehyde which I have. Then I can have this as a ketone, right? And this is the other ketone which I have, positional ketone. Okay, no, sorry, this is aldehyde, and the other one is ketone. So ketone I can have only 1. So total number of isomers are 3 in this case. So this is the type that can be asked. Suppose if it is similar type of question that is being asked, but this time we have C4H6O. So check out, the degree of unsaturation is 2 now. Degree of unsaturation. How do we calculate the degree of unsaturation? See, there are 4 carbons. Add 1 to that. Okay, minus total number of hydrogens divided by 2. Okay, so that is 2. Now we need to exclude alcohols, ethers, oxyranes, epoxides, everything. So only aldehydes and ketones we have to check out. So we can see double bond O H. First I'm making all the aldehydes possible. One is this one, right? So other aldehyde which I can make is a double bond which can come here. Okay, the other aldehyde which I can make is by changing the position of that like this. Okay, then check out ketones. So ketones 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay, I will have one double bond O and here. So this is the only ketone I can get, because if you try to change the position, I have to place double bond also. Next, cyclic. Cyclic form I can have C double bond OH. This is one form I can have. The other form I can have is C double bond O. This. Okay. So hopefully I've covered all of them. In case I've missed, you check out later. But I just wanted to give a gist of how you can start solving on this. So these are the possible number of isomers if the degree of unsaturation is 2. Okay. Now check this. In case if we have CN, H2N and O2, CN, H2N as in degree of unsaturation is 1. So degree of unsaturation is 1. Then, but if there are 2 oxygens, then definitely you can have functional groups like acids, esters, hydroxycarbonyls, ether plus carbonyls. Okay, carbonyls as in aldehydes, ketones, both. So these are all various combinations we can have. Okay, we will see through examples. Now, this is one very typical JEE mains question which has always confused students: alcohols and phenols. Okay, the minute OH group is directly connected to benzene, that is phenol. But if it is connected via an alkyl group, that is an alcohol, and both of them are functional isomers of each other. Okay, so do not make a mistake there. So alcohols and phenols are always functional isomers of each other. Similarly, a nitro group and a nitrito group, that is also a functional group of each other. If alkyl is connected to nitrogen, we call it as nitro. If it is connected via oxygen, we call it as nitrito. So both of them are functional groups of each other. Cyanides and isocyanates, I'm pretty sure you are aware of that. Those two are functional groups of each other. Okay. Next, amides and oximes. You can see this is an amide, and amide on tautomerism, I can also change that into an oxime form. This is called an oxime form. In case if you have not come across this, C double bond N with an OH group is called oxide. So those two are also functional isomers of each other. Okay. Next, different degree of amines are functional isomers. Now suppose if you have this this particular nitrogen, you can see this is a simple amine, what we known as the primary amine. If that is been substituted with some alkyl here, that will become secondary. If two of them are substituted, then that becomes tertiary. So primary, secondary and tertiary amines, all of them are functional isomers of each other. So all three are functional isomers of each other. Same is the case with amides also. These are simple primary amide, secondary amide, tertiary amide. All of them are functional isomers of each other. Thiols, if you check out, this is an thiol, just like an alcohol, and this is a thioether. Those are also functional isomers of each other. Okay. Now, few questions, especially isomerism these days, are more asked on the benzene form. Okay. So benzene form, if the questions are coming, how you need to think about. He asked question that was asked once in this was asked in screening exam, IIT screening exam. So C8H8O is given, and we need to find out only benzene type of aldehydes and ketones. We need to find only benzene type of aldehydes and ketones. Benzene type, as in you're completely fixed that this would become, right, C6. So what do we have here? Sorry, here C7H6O. First, benzene type of aldehydes and ketones. You can see first, you can say C6H5 is completely dedicated to phenyl. This is phenyl. Okay. Other than that, what is left out? Only we'll be left out with CHO, right? So we'll be left out with CHO. So this is the only possibility which you can check it out. No other aldehyde or ketone is possible in this, right? The first case, check out. So only one isomer you can get, which is of aldehyde and ketone type with benzene form. Second, C8H8O. So in case if it is C8H8O, then how many possible aldehydes and ketones you can have? Now this is an interesting question. There is one methyl that has increased now. So what I can say, first you write C6H5. On this, let us first start with CHO. So we will be left out with one CH3. Okay. So one CH3 group is left. So keep arranging that one CH3. Okay. One at ortho position, one at meta position, and one at para position. So these three I would get anyway. Other than that, now you write the keto form. So here I'll make it as a ketone. So this will become a keto form. Okay. So acetophenone. Then I will make this an aldehyde with straight chain. This is a straight chain aldehyde. Got it? With 2-phenyl aldehyde, that is ethanol. So these are the possibilities which I can get. So total number of isomers are 5. So this is one typical question that can be asked. So we need to find out total number of isomers only of aldehydes and ketone kinds on benzene. Okay. Next, if you have carboxylic acids, okay, the question now asked is carboxylic acids and esters. Okay, this is very, very important because a lot of mistakes we do it in esters only. Okay. I've seen majority of the time students make mistake in esters. So check out carefully. If we have C4H8O2, that means 4 carbon, degree of unsaturation is 1. Okay, so I can make it as acids and esters. So let's see that. First, I will make it as an acid. This is the first straight acid, butanoic acid. Okay, then one substituted acid, so OH with this propanoic acid will substitute. Okay, then now when you are writing the esters, I would insist you to write first from methanoate. Okay, write from methanoate. Usually we miss out on that. So methanoate is H C double bond OO with whatever the group that is remained. This is remained because 1, 2, 3, 3 carbons are remained. Again, check out if there is any possibilities in the methanoate with positional form. So I can make this as this one. This is also a methanoate. Next, write ethanoate. This is ethanoate. Ethanoate will have 2 of them. Okay. Next, you can write this as 1, 2, 3. Yeah, you can write it as propanoate with O and this. So these are the possible ones. So total there are 6 possibilities of acids and esters in C4H8O2. So I guess that part is clear, guys. Okay. So I'm rushing a little bit so that we can cover maximum things. As the session is finished, you can again go through all of these examples once again. Okay. Now this time I'm asking only benzene form. Benzene form of carboxylic acid derivatives. That means acid and esters. So in that case, I would start with benzene with COOH, okay, with one methyl between them, and then one COOH with one methyl group present on ortho, para, meta. So all these 3, correct? Then this acid, now I'm making esters. So first I'll make it as COOCH3. Okay, this is benzenoate. One second. Okay, so check this. So for carboxylic acid, we know that we'll have these 4, and then for esters, we'll have these combinations. So first I'm writing that with methanoate. Methanoate, again, I have one methyl group on it, so I can move that as ortho, meta, para. Okay, so these 3 I will get. So 3 here. So 1 here, 1 here, I got. And lastly, what I would have is H C double bond O with CH2 and then benzene. So this is 1. Okay. So these are the total number of isomers which I can get. So total we have 9 of them. Okay. So these are typical questions that can be asked from functional groups. So I think you should be able to get this correct. Let's check this. Next term is about metamers. Okay. Metamers only differ in terms of alkyl groups around a polyvalent atom. Okay, around a polyvalent atom, if anything has changed, then we call it as metamers. Okay, first of all, let us categorize which are monovalent and polyvalent. Okay, hydrogen, halide, these are all monovalent. And monovalent groups as in they will always come at terminal, or they will not have any other bond on the other side. 2 sides there won't be any bond, it will only have bond on one side. So this OH, CHO, COCl, CN, NC, they will only have bond on one side. So these are all monovalent. Polyvalent, ethers. See, ethers will have alkyl group on both sides. Amines will have both sides. Phosphines will have both sides. Okay, thioethers will have on both sides. Okay, these are atoms, polyvalent atoms. Polyvalent groups as in you can see ketones, thioketones, then you have esters, okay, amides and hydrides. These are all the polyvalent groups. So they will have different alkyl groups on both the left side as well as right side. Okay. So if the left hand side and the right hand side alkyl groups are not matching, they are different, then we call them as metamers. Okay. So for instance, you can check out first example. Left side I have methyl, right side I have propyl. So carbon by carbon number, if at all I have checked, it is 1 and 3. Now left side I have ethyl, right side I have ethyl. So 2 and 2. So see the number of carbons and on left and right have changed. So you call it as metamers. Okay. Usually when it comes to positional isomers, we never break the carbon in the carbon-carbon principal chain. Okay. Why we require this as an important term here is we see sometimes it appears like a metamer, but it is actually positional. See in the case of this A and C, this structure I'm drawing it as C. See in the A I have 1, 2, 3. This is the carbon chain length. Here also it is 1, 2, 3. Only the methoxy position has changed. Okay. If you see the number of carbons on left and right, left I have 1 carbon, right I have 3 carbon. Left I have 1 carbon, right again I have 3 carbon. So since the number of alkyl groups have not changed, I cannot call them as metamers. So they will be simply positional isomers. These are not metamers. See the next one. Here I have 1 carbon on the left. This entire thing is a group, right? So sorry, this entire thing is a polyvalent group. With respect to group, left hand side I have 1, right hand side I have 2. Now I have 2 and 1. So it has changed. So number of alkyl groups have changed on both the sides. So these are called metamers. Okay. So sometimes metamers can be positional isomers also, which is the case what you'll get it in ketones. So if you check out, if you come across this is the ketone that is 3-one, this is 2-one. So both of them are ketones. I'm not breaking the principal carbon chain, correct? See, just the position of double bond has changed. So that's why they are called positional also. And if you see the number of carbons on the left hand side, there are 2 and 2. Here now there are 3 and 1. So number of carbons have also changed. So hence these are metamers as well as positional isomers. If you come across multiple correct question, tick both of them. If you come across single correct, usually give more priority to metamers. Okay. So if metamers is not there in the option, give positional. Okay. Next. See on this part, on left hand side I have 2. Okay. Right hand side I have 2. Got it? Here left hand side I have 3. Right hand side I have 1. So definitely they are metamers. Okay. But are they positional? Now they are not positional because the number of carbon length has changed. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. But now it is 1, 2, 3, 4 only. Okay. So hence these are metamers as well as chain isomers. Okay. But given the priority, metamers should be given more priority while, giving it for single correct questions. I think that part is clear about metamers. See a few more examples here. So in case if you have like this, so I've added some 4 structures here. We need to check what the relation they possess. 1, 2. 1 and 2, check out left side there is 0, left side there is 0, right side we have 3. Here there is 1, here there is 1 and 2. Here we have 2 and 1. Here we have 3 and 0, but this is not at all a same functional group. So I don't have to tick that. So 1 and 2 definitely metamers because number of alkyl groups changing on left to right. 1 and 3 also metamers because the groups have changed. 1 and 4, see 1 and 4, both of them are different functions altogether. When you get something as a functional isomer, you will not call any other isomer. Okay, please remember this. If multiple correct question comes and you said there is functional also, then metamer also, don't take metamers now. Okay. So it should only be functional. When the functional comes, it will be only functional. It cannot be carried out with other groups. Okay, other isomers. Next, 2 and 3. If you check 2 and 3, they are definitely metamers. The alkyls are different. Check out 2 and 4. 2 and 4, again, they are functional. Okay. 2 and 4, and also 3 and 4. I guess I didn't write 3 and 4. Yeah. 3 and 4, those are also functionals. Okay. So I guess that part is clear now. Now see this one. First and second. Okay. Again, very, very tricky one. Here, it appears like, I have exchanged the alkyl group. Left side, I have kept cyclopropyl, cyclohexyl. In the second structure, I have kept it as cyclohexyl on the right hand side. But it appears like metamers. Immediately, our answer will go for metamers. But check out. Here, this is on the phenyl ring. That means on the benzene ring. This becomes a phenylic group, while this is a cyclohexyl alcohol group. So both of them are different functions. So these are definitely not metamers. These are only functional. Functional only. Okay. I think that part is clear. See the next one. A, B, C, D are given, and we need to say which of them are the different forms of isomers. Left side, I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So there are 5 carbons. Here there is 1 carbon. 1, 2, 3, 4. 4 and 2. Here we have 1, 2, 3. Okay. And it is like there are 2 different groups altogether here, like this. And we have 1, 2, 3, 4. 4 here, 1 here, and 1 here. Okay. Now when you compare A and B kind, A and B kind have different number of alkyl groups. So definitely they are metamers. Okay. If you see B and C kind, B and C, the type of that group itself is different, right? One is a secondary amine, the other one is a tertiary amine. So they are functional isomers. C and D. C and D are tertiary. Both of them are tertiary, but they have difference in that alkyl group. So hence we can call it as metamers. So C and D are metamers. A and C. If you see A and C here, again they are functional because you are comparing 2 degree to 3 degree. Next, A and D. If you check out A and D, again they are functional. Correct. B and D are also functional. So this way you can have any comparisons that can be given. So you should be able to identify. I think this part is clear now. Now check out on tautomerism. Functional isomers where 2 functional groups are in equilibrium. Okay, so if they are in equilibrium, you call them as tautomers. Both of them are functional isomers also, but usually we always refer them as tautomers. Okay. Now check out. We have keto form and enol form. Keto is a separate functional group. Keto or aldehyde. Enol is a different functional group, which is an alcohol group. Okay. I'm sure you have learned all of this part of it. What is a dyad and triad system? So I'm just brushing you through. I'm not getting into the detail of what is a dyad, triad, and all of them. See, normally when you say dyad, that means from the origin, you have to go to the next carbon. So this is called origin, and this is called the terminal position. So from the origin, if you go to the terminal in only where they are assigned with only 1 bond difference, that is called dyad tautomerism. Best example is HCN and CNH. Next, triad tautomerism. If you have from 1 to 3, if any group is exchanged, so then that is triad tautomerism, which is what we see it in keto-enol tautomerism, correct? And you can see that from 1 to 3, this position hydrogen has shifted. So that's why it is triad tautomerism. What are the other examples we should look out for? Okay, nitro acinitro. Okay, see, name is not important because you won't be asked, okay, what is the name of it, but you will be asked whether there is a tautomerism being shown or not. See, if it is a nitro group, we have this. Now, if a double bond comes on this side, definitely that will be a different functional group that is called acinitro. And this Whether if you check out keto and enol, the major side will always be on the keto form. Most of the cases, okay, there are certain cases which will make enol to be more stable, but majority of the time, okay, ketone becomes more stable. You can compare this with the acid base characteristic. See, this hydrogen is connected to, oxygen, which is more acidic, while this hydrogen is connected to carbon, which is less acidic, correct? So therefore, reaction on the left hand side, more acidic to less acidic, will be more. So you, but in a simple way, this is the way to remember. Wherever you're not, for ketonal we have much more details, but for other groups, if you have to just mention which will be major and minor in general, check out the one which is more acidic or less acidic. So this side, the hydrogen will be more acidic, so it will go mostly onto the left hand side. So you'll have this as a major amount. So K equilibrium would always be less than 1, most of the cases. Similarly here, K equilibrium will be greater than 1. Okay, but this is not on the basis of bond energy. This is on the base, this is not on the basis of acid base. This is on the basis of bond energy. Okay, so few cases it will have like that. Now imine and if you check out imine and enamine, okay, so this is imine group. C double bond N is an imine group. C double bond C with NH2 group is called enamine group. Okay, so again the same problem here. You can see NH2, if you compare this with NH2 here and this side, this can undergo resonance stabilization after removing the hydrogen. Sorry, this minus which it comes, this can undergo resonance stabilization. So therefore, this will be more acidic. So reaction will be mostly on the left hand side. So imines are usually major in the equilibrium. Imide, imino. Okay, so this is the next type of tautomerism, imide, iminol. So this is an amide group, amide, and this is iminol group, where you have OH this time on carbon. If OH is on the nitrogen, that is called oxime. Okay. Now in this case also you can see H is much acidic on oxygen, so reaction would be always on the backside. So again on the basis of acid base. Phenol and ketone, right? So if you check out, this is the phenol and the other one is the keto form, cyclic keto form. The equilibrium will be completely towards phenol because of another term called aromaticity. Okay, because of the aromaticity reason, it will come mostly on the backside. So enol will be more stable in this as compared to that of ketone, and that content would be more. Next, nitroso-oxime. Nitroso-oxime, this is also on the basis of bond energy. We can't judge it on the basis of acid-base case, and just have to remember it would be more towards oxime. Heptal tautomerism. Now, if you see heptal tautomerism, where is it happening? See, from this position, where is it? Double bond O from here, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. So the hydrogen has migrated from 7 to 1, correct? So this is a heptad tautomerism. Correct? So if it is a heptad tautomerism, so this is nitrosophenol, which is converted into quinone oxime. So in case if you come across the cases, you have to take this also shows tautomerism. Okay. Next one is triazotautomerism. When you have N double bond N, this is usually called as azo group. Along with that, if you have NH also present, that is called triazo. Now that N double bond N shifted to the other side of it. It has shifted to this side. That's why it is called that's what you see it as a tautomerism, and this is also triad tautomerism. That's why it is called triazo. So again, the major contribution will be on the left hand side, okay, on the basis of bond energies. Hydrazotautomerism. If you have N double bond N, and along with that we have CH2, there should be an alpha carbon which should have a hydrogen. So that will again shift onto the right hand side with N double bond CH. If you see this side also, based on acid base, we can say left side will be the more case, because this hydrogen can be easily migrated because that is more acidic. So left side would be major. No, see the usually the question would be asked like, which are the following or the tautomers. So checking the one particular compound, you should be able to recognize the enol part or the keto part. So I've given the enol part, this would be its keto part. Got it? One second, I made a mistake. Double bond and double bond. Yeah. Okay. If you have this, then this would be the keto form of it. Sorry, enol form of it. This is the keto form. This is the enol form. See, now if you check this out, when I remove this hydrogen and put it here to make the tautomer, then the group is becoming aromatic. So in fact, almost 100%, will be, in the enol form only. Next, check out this one. If you have this keto form converting into an enol form, okay, expected is that major should be this side because of aromaticity. We expect that major should be on the forward direction. Got it? But major is on the backward direction, and this is purely because of the bond energies. So bond energies of C double bond O as compared to C double bond C are much higher in this case. So the reaction would be, the major would be still on the keto side. This is the only case where keto is overcoming over aromaticity. Okay. So special and important case, guys. So please do check this. Okay. Next, if you were to ask only tautomeric structures, I'm just showing it. Okay, I'm not doing all of them because you can just go through this notes once again. So that should help you. See, if you have this is a pyrolyc form, correct? So this is pyrolyc form. So this would have the major part of it. Okay. And this is just simply C double bond N in a cyclic form, right? So that can be tautomerized with this particular hydrogen. Okay. Now this is the enol form, what do you say, imidol form, and this is an amide form, right? So amide form would be more stable, so the reaction would be more onto the forward direction. Okay. Next, this is, you can see again, more like an acid form here. So this would be COOH acid, and this is the form which you'll see. C double bond NOH on this. I can write it as C double bond NH, again an amide form. If you have this H being replaced here, so we will get this particular form. Okay. Again, this H, if you replace here, we'll get this C double bond C, that is also a tautomeric form. Okay. Similarly, if I make this H to come back here, so I'll get this as amide form. So these are different ways of writing. Now, few cases, this is important, few cases which does not show tautomerism. This is a typical JEE question where you just have to identify which of them are not showing tautomerism. Okay. Check it out. First one, quinone, paraquinone. So here, although there is some hydrogens present on alpha position, there is definitely an hydrogen present on alpha position. It does not undergo tautomerism because it is sp2 hybridized. We need an sp3 hybridized hydrogen. Okay, carbon which has an hydrogen. So this does not undergo tautomerism. Same is the case here. Okay, although here it appears like a quinone oxime, but the problem is instead of CH3, if it was H, definitely tautomerism would have happened. Okay, but here it is not the case. So CH3 is present, so there is no other hydrogen which is present here. Okay, these four hydrogens are there on the sp2 hybridized carbon, so that can't undergo tautomerism. So no tautomerism here also. Here you can see on the alpha carbon there is no hydrogen, all of them are methyl groups, so again no tautomerism. Here although there is one hydrogen, but they are on the sp2 carbon, so again no tautomerism. Both sides there are phenyl, no tautomerism. Here it is sp3, here definitely it is sp3. Okay, and it has a hydrogen, we expect that to undergo tautomerism, but it is a bridgehead. Okay, bridged carbon. So bridged carbon does not undergo tautomerism because double bond can't be formed there. Next, see, this is a very interesting case. Okay, this has all the reasons to form tautomerism. So suppose in case if it forms the tautomers, double bond OH. Okay, so because this is sp3 already, this is sp3, so we can expect that to form tautomerism, and it is coming out to be resonance. But the problem is it is becoming anti-aromatic. If it is becoming anti-aromatic, we say there is no tautomerism happening only. We can't say that small traces will be formed or something. No tautomerism in that case. Along with that, HC double bond OH, that is formaldehyde, again no tautomerism. Got it? So these are the cases you should instantly recognize whether they are undergoing tautomerism or not. Okay. So practice this once again. Check out which cases you do not get tautomerism. Yeah, beta.
In the first line, third one,
Yeah.
can carbon lose that hydrogen?
Carbon lose that hydrogen. sp3. Let me check.
Yes, sir. Sir, if it will lose, then this. Yes, sir, like this. CH2.
Yeah. So making it. Oh, right. So this can do it. Correct. My mistake.
Yes, sir.
So I should have write it as CR3. Yeah. Okay. Now, usually when it comes to keto enol, why the percentage mostly drives on the keto side or enol side? We can discuss that, in a conceptual manner. First of all, you got to understand this. You will never have a keto and enol with 50-50%. Okay, it's highly improbable to get 50% of ketone and 50% of enol in the same mixture. Okay, usually it would be either on the ketone side completely or on the enol side. At least you would have 70-30 percentage, but we do not have 50-50%. Why is that so? See, conceptually, because this is something which will help you in aldehydes and ketones a lot. When you learn aldehydes and ketones, then this would help a lot. So here itself will let us see how we can think about it. Suppose if you have this keto form, in the keto form, what are the types of bonds we are breaking? First, we are breaking C double bond O. We are breaking CH bond here, and we are making C and C double bond. Okay, this is a bond making. These two, first two are breaking. This is a bond making. On the enol side, what do we have? C double bond C we have to break. Okay, and we have to make C double bond O, and OH we have to break. Got it? So if you consider the total bond enthalpies that are involved on the left hand side, bond energies, and what are the bond energies which are involved on the right hand side, right? So we require more amount of energy, to convert that into enol form. So approximately around 1500 kilojoules per mole. On the right hand side, we require around 1452 kilojoules of mole for breaking and making those bonds. Got it? So relatively, it is much easier to convert from enol towards ketone. So that is what we are able to see that. So the difference in the energy for both of them is approximately 48. Let us say 50. Okay. So 50 kilojoules per mole is the difference in the energy. Got it? Now imagine if, since they are in equilibrium, so I can say delta G is 0. Delta J of this change is 0, of this reaction is 0. So in that case, I can write delta G naught is equal to minus RT ln K equilibrium. So if that is the case, imagine if there is 99% ketone. So if I take keto and enol, and one case I'll take it as 99% and 1%, then I will get minus RT ln 99. So that is coming out to be, if I substitute all of them, that I'm getting it as minus 11.42 kilojoules per mole. Okay, delta G naught. Okay, if it is 1% of enol and 99% of ketone, I'm getting delta G naught value is minus 11.42. If the enol content is 99% and ketone is only 1%, then delta G naught, I'm getting it as 11.42. Okay. So the maximum change in the energy is how much? 22.84. correct? So add these two, so it is 22.84. So just by providing this much amount of energy on either on the left hand side, either removing or providing, correct? So if you provide this much amount of energy towards ketone, it will convert into enol. If you remove this much amount energy from enol, it will convert back into ketones, correct? So this energy, if you compare to 50, right, so that is quite less, right? And that is primarily the reason providing a small bit of energy or any stabilizing factor, if you come across, it would instantly shift on to either left hand side or on the right hand side, or rather I mean to say major product would be always seen either on the ketone side or enol side. Okay, they are very sensitive, ketone or enol, very sensitive towards any stabilizing elements. Okay, so what are the stabilizing elements we generally see? First is aromatization. If at all there is any aromatization happening in the enol form, that will instantly drive the reaction towards the enol side. So which is the case here. You can see it is hardly 1%, and phenol maximum has 99% of phenolic group only, enol form only. Okay, but as you see, double bonds, if it is not aromatic, majority of the side it is at the ketone, 80% of that it is on the ketone side. Similarly, if you see aromaticity here, this keto form is only 1%, and this is almost 99. In fact, it is 99.9%, which is set. Okay, so that amount of once again, I'll remove this so that you can see clearly. Yeah, now you can see. So that's how it is resonating. Okay. Second factor by which you can stabilize is by intramolecular hydrogen bonding. Even a simple hydrogen bonding will completely drive the reaction onto the enol side. Okay, so when you have an active methylene, this carbon is called active methylene. So when you have an active methylene, it can involve in a hydrogen to form a chelated 6-membered ring. So when the 6-membered ring is formed, you can see it will show a hydrogen bond nicely. Okay, so on showing this hydrogen bonding, this enol will form more stable. Okay, so remember this is one usual mistakes which we usually do. Both the sides, left hand side on the right hand side, both of them are on the ketone form only. So the product which you will get enol form is almost 90%. This is hydrogen, sorry. Okay, so if one of them is methyl, okay, if one of them is methyl, what will it do? It will try to stabilize this double bond O by giving the resonance here. So what will it do? It will decrease the acidity of this methylene group, correct? Because the acidity of that methylene group depends upon how easily that can be removed and how you can make that minus to involve in that conjugation, because the minus which will come, you can involve that into the conjugation here, right? So if that acidity is decreased, so their enol content will start decreasing. So the enol content here mainly depends upon the acidity of the methylene group, okay, active methylene group. So you could see that if you keep adding CH3, so the enol, the content enol is changing. You see it is started to decrease. Still, every time enol will be more in content, but if you have to consider the content of this and this, okay, this is that can be asked in exam, that compare the enol content of these two. Then when you compare the enol content of these two, you need to check that methyl was already supporting for C double bond O, which will decrease the acidity of the active methylene. If both of them are ketones on both the sides, if you have ketones, right? So then even the enol content is decreasing further. Okay. Now, in case if there is a methyl, in case if there is any phenyl group present there, then it will undergo resonance stabilization here. So suddenly again the acidity is increasing. Okay, so because the acidity of that active methylene group has increased, so percentage enol content has increased. If you involve phenyl on both the sides, this minus will become even more resonance stabilized on both the sides here. So because of which again the enol content has increased drastically up to 96%. Okay. Okay. By chance, if you have any esters, okay, if you have any esters on both the sides, esters would give very strong support by plus M effect. Okay. Because of which the acidity of this active methylene decreases drastically. In fact, now it appears like almost enol content is more and keto content is more. and enol content is less. Okay, so in general, active methylene, if you check it out, aldehydes would have more acidic active methylenes then compared to that of ketones, then compared to that of esters. To that point, in fact, the pH, if you check out, pKa value, okay, almost come up to 7 here. Okay, so you can see it becomes so acidic. So hence, enol content in only in these cases, guys. Only when intramolecular hydrogen bonding is supporting, then aldehydes would be more than that of ketones than esters. I guess that is in general. I hope you understood that. Okay. So that is a part of, uh, tautomers.
Sir,
Yeah, please tell me.
sir, so if you change the temperature enough, is it possible to exchange the percentage?
Yes, it does. Okay. So I'm going to discuss that now. One minute, guys. My screen has freezed. Okay. Now, few important cases. Okay. So where we usually make some mistakes. So I'll take this exceptional cases. See. Now see. First one is the effect of alpha carbonyl group. Okay. So in case if we have this way, double bond O, and let me write the enol form of it, then it would be double bond OH, and I can write this as double bond O, and this way, and I can say there is a hydrogen bonding which can take place. Okay. But it has been still found that mostly up to 100% it is there, and it is hardly any percentage here. Okay, or maybe 0.001 like that. Okay, although it appears like it has an hydrogen bonding, there is a chelation of 5-membered ring, but yet ketone is identified to be more in this case. Now on a similar basis, I'll write one more, then I'll discuss both of these cases together. Suppose if you have this double bond O, and this, if I write the enol form of it, we'll get this as double bond O, okay, O and H, and this would have a strong hydrogen bonding on it. Okay. Now what happened here? First, let me explain the second one. See, this lone pair will almost come. I'm sure you have learned conformers, right? So when it comes to, think it more like a conformers. So with respect to this restricted carbon, this lone pair will almost come head on, like, a staggered, like an eclipse position. All right. So they will have huge repulsions which you'll get here. Got it? The minute you come across here, now the repulsions are lost. In fact, the hydrogen bonding has gained. So 100% you'll have enol content in this. Got it? So the backward reaction is hardly favored. That means keto content is very, very less. Okay. On the other hand, in case of A, if you check out what happened here, the minute we had O and O in this particular conformer, right? They are in an anti-conformer. In an anti-conformer, the lone pairs will not repel at all. In fact, they will far away from each other or completely opposite to each other, right? So the dipoles of the carbonyl groups, which are aligned anti to each other, they will minimize the repulsion. Okay, so they'll minimize the repulsions on the oxygen. Got it? And that brings the extra stability, although there is some kind of a chelation seen by hydrogen bonding. Got it? So this is an exception which we usually see. So check it out. In this particular case, first case, keto is more favored, or keto will have more content. Second case, enol will have more content. Okay. Next second thing we'll see is the effect of solvent. Suppose if you take polar, okay, right? So usually what happens, see H2O from hydrogen, right? It would start bonding with C double bond O and making this group less available for intramolecular hydrogen bonding. So enol content usually decreases. So normally we saw that this is around 76% when you have uh, this we just learned, right? If you have CH3, got it? Beta diketones. In beta diketones, almost it has 76%, correct? So here, if you check out O, H, double bond O, and hydrogen bonding with CH3 and CH3. This is how it was. Now, if you see the enol content, percentage enol, or I'll write this as percentage enol. So percentage enol in various phases, like if you check out in a gas phase, it is in fact going up to 92%. Got it? In non-polar, like hexane, in non-polar, it is also going up to 90%. Okay. In liquid phase, it is coming out to be 76%. Liquid phase, when I say in a liquid phase, it could be aprotic or non-polar liquids like benzene. Then CH3, C triple bond N. So this is polar with high dipole moment. Then as the dipole moment is increasing, you can see the percentage is decreasing.
I waiting to say
Okay. I'll come back. Go. So in water, it is almost found to be only 15%. So I hope you understood this. Okay. So in polar solvents, okay, definitely the enol content will decrease. This is the second thing which you need to know. You have any class right now, guys? So can I take 5 more minutes? Any one of you please respond? Yeah, okay. Okay. So see how the effect of temperature would be. So high temperature, right, will shift the equilibrium towards keto form. Okay. If you just recall, I just discussed about delta G, which is thermodynamically more stable form. It is always the keto form which is thermodynamically more stable. So that's why it will always shift onto the keto side. In fact, I'll give you an experimental value for the same. So if you see that enol form, what we have just checked it out. Okay. So the bonding, the hydrogen bonding will become weaker, and at around 22 degrees, again, this is a purely experimental value. So that helps us to understand how the decrease in the enol content is. So the content was almost 95%. Then it has checked in 68%. Okay. And all this enol form was checked out in gaseous phase. Right. And around 275 degrees centigrade, it is found to be 49%. Right. So which clearly shows that as the temperature is increasing, the ability of hydrogen bonding decreases and it will go more towards the keto side. Okay. Now, these are the 3 important factors which you need to be very clear about tautomerism. Okay. So how and what does change the percentage enol content? Again, very typical questions. Either of them can be asked. So you be prepared on that. Now if you see the mechanism of tautomers, okay, what is the mechanism of tautomers? Just I'll give you a brief hint of it. The tautomers can be enhanced by acid catalyzed, so that is acid catalyzed tautomerism or base catalyzed tautomerism. Okay. Right. So if it is acid catalyzed tautomerism, you can see you'll have double bond O and adding H plus. The lone pair on oxygen would attack on H plus. It would make this group as OH. Okay. and this is CH2H. I'm writing it this way so that I can show how water will act as a base and try to extract this proton, and this bond will try to become a double bond, right? And this form of ion, right? So which is, I mean, this entire set of species which has formed here. Okay, so this is called oxenium ion. Oxenium ion. So in acid catalyzed tautomerism, first you see oxenium ion. Achha, oxenium ion formation is just an acid-base reaction. Acid-base reactions are very fast. That means oxygen just extracting proton. This step is fast. Okay. Then water extracting a proton and trying to break that carbon-hydrogen bond and making it as a double bond to form an enol. This formation is enol. And this is the slow step and also the redetermining step for acid catalyzed tautomerism. So that means if enol becomes stable, so stability of enol, okay, right, is proportional to the rate of reaction or rate of the tautomerism, whether it goes forward or backward. I mean, how fast it will go in the forward direction, that depends upon the stability of enol. So more stable enol, more faster it will go into the forward direction, because that is the RDS. So I think that part is clear. Now check out the second one, when it is base catalyzed. See, not too much of details of more than this is needed, because you have an entire chapter on this in, aldehydes and ketones. So don't worry about that. Discussing, in fact, there are a lot of points to be discussed on this, but that will be better discussed in aldehydes and ketones. As of now, what type of questions you will purely asked on the basis of tautomerism, I'm focusing on that. So what you can be asked is, what is the RDS, what happens in acid catalyst, what will form. So these are the terms you must know. So suppose if this is a ketone which I'm taking, suppose this is how it is, and you're reacting in a base catalyst, then what we can expect? This OH minus will extract this proton, okay, and this bond will break and we will try to make it as a double bond, and this would move. So thereby you will have this as CH2 double bond C and O minus CH3. Now this is not an enol. This is called enolate ion. Okay, enolate ion. And extracting a proton, breaking carbon-hydrogen bond itself is a very slow step, and that's why it is the RDS of the reaction. Got it? And this, on hydrolysis, HOH, oxygen will pull away the proton from water, and you'd have CH2, COH, and CH3. Okay. So what we can say here, it is not the enol. See, it's enol is forming, but is it the one which is deciding the rate? No. So rate of tautomerism or rate of reaction would be proportional to stability of enolate. Or in short, we can't because it is just an intermediate. You can see, we can say, if at all we can see this, because we are extracting a proton here, if this carbon has some withdrawing groups and increase the acidity, the reaction will go forward. So it can depend on the acidity of ketones, acidity of this carbonyl group. So more amount of acidic nature, more faster the reaction will go in the forward direction. Got it? As of now, you got to learn one thing out of it. Okay, so what is called a deuterium exchange. Please do not get into too much details of it, because it will take a lot of time to understand the theory carefully, but problem solving wise, I will explain what you need to learn from that. Okay, so suppose if at all a question is given to you, got it? Explain the mechanism in forward and backward direction backward direction. In the following, as in you can see, we have double bond O, and you treat that with OD minus in the presence of D2O. In the presence of D2O. Okay. Then what would happen if you just go back to the mechanism? Just let's compare the mechanism above, because it is a base catalyzed. You can see first OD minus will extract the proton from the alpha position. So you can see this is the alpha position. So from any of the alpha position, OD minus will extract the proton and it would form an enolate ion. And an enolate ion is actually getting protonated by the solvent which is present. In this case, the solvent is D2O. So definitely deuterium will come on that. Okay. So we can say that first, what I'm writing the step directly here. So I'm pretty sure you can imagine one thing, that there is enol which is forming first. So enol that is formed here would be, let's say, on this side with OD that is forming, correct? This is the enol that is forming. Okay. But this enol is not stable. Again, it would react and get back to the keto form. But this time when it is coming back, how you need to think? So because these are all equilibrium reactions, guys, it is happening both in forward as well as backward reaction. Okay. So we have OD here, right, and a double bond here. Okay. So now what will it do? Here we have, put this carefully, O and D bond. Yeah. So in the solution we have OD minus. Good. In the solution we have OD minus. So OD minus will extract this D. So as soon as that is done, oxygen will take away its lone pair this way, and this will become minus D2O, and then this will start becoming a double bond and get this minus charge on this side, double bond O. Why it is doing this? It is trying to come to the more stable side. Okay. So minus, this is the intermediate which is formed, and that would extract deuterium from here. Right. So therefore I'll have double bond O and D. So this hydrogen has completely been replaced by deuterium now. So this would be anyway major, because ketone would be major. Okay. So this would have more content, maximum content would be ketone, and but that earlier the ketone which was there, it had hydrogens, now it has deuterium. So this exchange is what we call it as deuterium exchange. Deuterium exchange. Only this much part will be asked from, the isomerism part, that where all the deuterium is exchanged. Okay. So if you keep it for prolonged time, what would happen, right? So usually these are all equilibrium reactions. So if you keep it for prolonged time, okay, solvent keep on acting on that. So we will have OD minus in D2O. If you do it for prolonged time, in questions, if nothing is mentioned, you will always take it as a prolonged time. Okay, guys? If nothing is mentioned like one equivalent or for instantly, okay, nothing is mentioned like that, you'll always take it as a prolonged time. So all the hydrogens will get exchanged by, all the alpha hydrogens will be exchanged by deuterium. And this will be the product. All right. So this is the type of question you will be asked, like how many number of hydrogen atoms can be replaced by deuterium on a prolonged treatment. I think this application you can do now. So I'm adding, right now I'll add a lot of questions into this, which with deuterium exchange, I would suggest you to do this. Okay. Along with that, before coming for the next session, I want you to read and come first instead of, I'll, because we hardly have much time for isomerism. So what I would suggest, I have written the notes of geometrical isomers. For instance, here, see, what are geometrical isomers, how they are, what is syn, anti, everything cis trans. So I have written it. Few cases I have explained, Few cases I have left it for you. Got it? So that thing you must complete it. Whatever I have left it, you please complete that. Okay. Most important part which you have to do is this priority order. Okay. How to identify the priority order. Next, how to assign E and Z. Okay. And finally, based on that, you should know how to find out the total number of geometrical isomers. And last type of questions is this one: how many total number of geometrical isomers and where they are been found. Okay. So this is the assignment I'm sending you along with it. So first and foremost, please read the class notes. Okay. Definitely you will have your own class notes. Compare with, if at all there is any missing points here and there. So write all your doubts in it. Read the entire geometrical isomerism part. Wherever you have doubts, keep messaging me. Okay. Then tomorrow when we discuss, we'll just brush through the geometrical isomers, see what all things you have doubts, we'll clear that off, and then we'll discuss about stereoisomers and conformers. Okay. So meanwhile, finish the questions on tautomerism and this. After you finish this only, then go for the assignment which I have sent you in the group. Okay. Okay, guys. Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Okay.